Alright, what's going on, guys? So, I just kind of wanted to make another video about this. I know I already did like a BIS list video, but there was a couple items that I missed, some things I didn't really account for. I didn't talk about armorsmithing or a 6% hit set for people that don't have a balanced druid in the raid. And there's just a couple like good side grade options that I wanted to briefly touch on. So I just, threw together a little something with the work I did on my last video. I just edited it a little bit and put together something for you guys that pretty much goes into all the different gear that you might use in tier 5, whether it's BIS or not, and tell you like which pieces are better in what situations, and which ones you might want to like really prio, like which ones are the best for you. And there was a couple corrections I'll make to my last video because I was wrong about a couple things. So I just decided to, better to just make a new video and clear up some things and help you guys figure out like what gear you want to use in tier 5. So let's get started. So this is what the set looks like. This is going to be your 3% hit set, and basically anyone who has a balanced druid in the raid is going to pretty much use this. As you can see, I'm using the engineering goggles. They are just so good. It's hard to go without those. They're just really stat heavy. Using Twin Blade of the Phoenix here, but whichever weapon you use doesn't really matter a whole lot. As you can see from my last video, the legs and the boots have changed. So we'll talk about that in a little bit here. But this is just a good brief overview. And of course, in the description, you can find links to all the sets. In case you want the 3% hit set, the 6% hit set, or the armorsmithing set, you can find all that stuff in the description below. So as for Helm, pretty straightforward, same as last time. You're going to want to go with the goggles. They are the best. Now if you don't have engineering, the tier 5 Helm from Vash is not a bad choice. Obviously it doesn't have any hit on it, so you're going to have to find your hit somewhere else. And it's just lacking in stats. You're going to lose crit, and you don't get any of the cool bonus effects like the gas clouds or stealth detection, or the farsight. But it's still a pretty good choice, and if you don't have engineering, it's going to be the best choice you have available to you. So not to be diminished in that regard. But if you are engineering, or if you really want to do the best damage you can do, you really just want to get the engineering goggles. They are insanely good. You're going to use these deep into tier 6. They're pretty much a tier 6 level helmet in terms of like the stat weight that they have on them. So they are just really good, and you're going to want to grab those right away. Now as for neck, there's another neck I am including in this video as opposed to my last video, because Telemachus Pendant of Mayhem is really good and pretty close. Now they're pretty much the same in terms of stats. You're just trading a little bit of hit and crit, or I'm sorry, trading a little bit of attack power and crit. But Telemachus's pendant is going to be really hard to get because it comes from Kael'thas. He drops like an item called the Verdant Sphere. You get 1 per kill, and there is a lot of other good items that come from that. Like I think your Survival Hunter wants this neck, and I think the tanks all want the neck. There's just it's going to be really high demand for the first like couple months, and it might be really hard to get a Pendant of Mayhem when you can get the Pendant of the Perilous from Trash in Serpent Shrine Cavern. So that's why I'm going to recommend you go with Pendant of the Perilous. And if you did get Telemachus's Pendant of Mayhem, it's not going to be a meaningful increase in DPS whatsoever. These two items are pretty much the same in terms of your DPS output. There might be a small increase going from one to the other, but that can change with a whole lot of variables, and there's just not any real meaningful significant difference between the two. So I'm definitely going to recommend Pendant of the Perilous. It's just easier to get. It's got that lovely strength that we like to scale up with our kings and our talents, and it's going to be what I'm going to recommend. So as for shoulders, as I said before, Shoulders of the Stranger are just the best. You use them all the way through tier 6 into Sunwell. The expertise is just impossible to beat. All the other melee are going to want these too. Rogues, warriors, all that kind of stuff. They're all going to want enhance. They're all going to want shoulder pads of the stranger. They're just that good. But from the same boss, you also have Pauldrons of the War Dancer, which are a good second option. If you don't manage to get stranger right away, War Dancer can be a pretty good second BIS choice for you. Kind of hold you over until you get a pair of strangers. But yeah, stranger shoulder pads are just, whether you're human or blood elf, that expertise is so good, and you're definitely going to want to get it, even though it is only 10, which is not a lot, but definitely going to want those. As for Cloak, Razor Scale Battle Cloak is just the best. It's from Tidewalker in SSC. It is better than Vengeance Wrap, which is obviously made from tailoring, which most of you probably have at the moment. But Vengeance Wrap isn't that far behind if you're stuck with it. You don't see a Battle Cloak for a long time. It's not that big of a deal. It's not something you should really pry over really high, but it is a modest upgrade. So it also doesn't really look that good. So if appearances are your concern, it doesn't look good at all. So, but you know, it is a great cape. You get almost a whole % of crit out of it, and you get a lot more attack power than Vengeance Wrap. So, as for chest, now this is where it gets a little tricky because there's like 4 different chest pieces that you can use in tier 5, but the Crystal Forged breastplate is going to be like the best, or the blacksmithing Bulwark of Ancient Kings. Now this is from armorsmithing. It requires 2 nether vortexes to make, that's the items that you get from trash in tier 5 that allow you to make the new blacksmithing items, like the Lionheart Executioner or the Bulwark of Ancient Kings. So obviously, like, you're not going to be able to make this if you don't have a Twin Blade of the Phoenix from Kael'thas. That's pretty much like a prerequisite for using this Bulwark of Ancient Kings. Now you'll notice at the bottom it has like a temporarily increases your health and strength, 30-minute cooldown effect. Now you can be pretty certain that any fight where you use that on-use effect, it's going to be better than your Crystal Forged breastplate. It's like having recklessness as a paladin, you know what I mean? Now, as for the stats themselves on these 2 chest pieces, you're not really changing a whole lot. You're basically trading like 8 strength for some crit and hit. Like, you gain crit and hit if you have the blacksmithing, armorsmithing chest, but you lose like 8 strength. And you also probably don't want to go for the socket bonus on this one, just because of the other sockets you'll have on your gear if you do use this item. So it's just an interesting choice to make. Actually, I guess it's about 12 strength. It's about 12 strength for 12 crit rating and 2 hit and the on-use effect. So I think consistently the armorsmithing chest piece might be a little bit worse, but when you get to use the on-use effect, which has a 30-minute cooldown, by the way, kind of long, it will be better on those fights where you get to use the on-use. But I don't think there's going to be a very meaningful DPS increase difference outside of the on-use effect between these two. And it's kind of a meme, it's kind of a niche if you want to go armorsmithing, you know. Not only do you have to kill Kael'thas to get the sword first, but, you know, then you have to go through all the trouble of crafting the chest, and, you know, having like a recklessness as a rep paladin is just kind of like gimmicky and memey. So for most people, I would just recommend getting the tier 5 one, the Crystal Forge. It's really good. It's one of the pieces where you're going to get your hit, and you know, that's not to be understated. So obviously it comes from Kael'thas. So now the other chest options that you have are Ranger Generals from Hydros and Krakenheart Breastplate from Lady Bash. Now if you get Ranger Generals, you can notice there's no hit on this item, so the problem that you're going to run into is you're going to have to add another item from somewhere else you're going to have to get your hit from. So, you know, there's a lot of different hit options that we'll get into later in the video that you can use here, but Krakenheart is going to be pretty decent because it's going to supply you the hit that you're going to need from your chest. So, you know, I would recommend Krakenheart before Ranger Generals, but neither of these is as good as tier 5. Tier 5 is just a lot better. So these are just kind of like side options that you might pick up while you're gearing that are okay. Overall, not bad. Although, if you had to pick between the two, I would pick Krakenheart because I like getting my hit for my chest piece. Your wrists are pretty much like I said in the last video. You have your Bladespire warbands, but you also do have these bracers of eradication, which are pretty similar. You just lose one socket, gain 5 strength, and gain a bunch of hit. Now, if you're using a 3% hit set, you're going to want to use Bladespire warbands, because that little bit of extra strength that you get from the socket bonus, like, I mean, it's something, right? And you don't really need the hit on your wrist item. If you have a balanced druid in the raid, you have enough hit on your chest and on your helm from goggles. You just don't need the hit from these items. So you're just going to stick with the Gruul Slayer, Bladespire warbands in your full BIS set. However, during gearing, you might need some hit, and these are a great option. These lurker bracers, bracers of eradication. This is a great option for gearing while you're getting hit. Or if you don't have a balanced druid, you're going to probably want to use these as one of your first items that you use for hit. You know, one of the first items that you contrast to your 3% hit set. These are probably one of the best items that you can use in tier 5 to get hit, because you pretty much don't lose any other like really important stats. You just lose like a little bit of strength. So it's, you know, they're really good. And we'll talk more about 6% hit later. But you know, these are the two bracers you're going to want to use, and if you don't already have Bladespire warbands, bracers of eradication can be pretty good, and they can fill in some hit for you while you gear up. Gloves, pretty self-explanatory. You know, you have gloves of the Searing Grip from Alar in Tempest Keep. Expertise, it's basically just a very minor direct upgrade to the trash gloves in Crusade. So I don't know if I'd put them really high on my prio, because you only gain 6 attack power, 3 expertise, 3 agility, but they would be in my top 5 or 6 probably. So I'd probably put them at 5th or 6th if like you had a loot list system or something like that. But if you don't have Kara gloves, I would definitely recommend putting these really high at your prio. So they are really good. But like, you know, with every other expertise item in the game, everybody's going to want them. All the melee are going to want them. So that's something also to keep in mind. As for your belt, you know, not enough can be said on this belt. Everybody wants this belt so bad. It's probably the DST of tier 5, as in like everybody wants it. It's super high demand, and it's like the biggest upgrade. Now this is going to give you almost 40 DPS on a 2-minute fight in tier 5. That's how much this belt is worth, as opposed to Girdle of the Endless Pit from Magtheridon. So this is the biggest upgrade you're going to get in tier 5. If you don't already have DST, you know, this is about the same of an upgrade as getting a DST. So your top 1 and 2 items that you're aiming for should be Belt of 100 Deaths and Dragonspine Trophy. Depending on which one you want more, you know, you can decide like which one is your very highest, but this should be way up there, because this belt is insane, and you're going to use it like the whole game basically. Until you get into Sunwell, you're going to use this belt. It's amazing. So not enough can be said about this belt. You know, it's as a rep paladin, you know, we gain the most value from expertise that any class does, because a dodge is so insanely punishing for us. So there is an argument to be made for paladins getting, you know, a little bit of heightened priority on these items, because getting dodged as a rep paladin is like much worse than getting dodged as like a rogue or a fury warrior, obviously. So now legs is also another tricky item, but it's not really that tricky. I mean, I'll explain. So if you're a blood elf, Shatrith leggings are still really good. Now if you're a human and you have the other expertise items like the Vash belt and shoulder pads of the stranger, the Shatrith leggings have so much expertise on them that they will put you over the cap. So you won't be able to use them if you have those other items. Now the reason why these are second BIS for blood elf but not human is because of that. Because if you get too much expertise as a human, you'll go over the cap and some of it will be wasted. Now, on that note, Shatrith leggings will still be really good for a human as they gear up before they get any of those other expertise items. So until you really have all the other expertise items, The Shattrath leggings are still going to be amazing for human. But leggings of murderous intent, which come from Kael'thas, are the best for everybody. They have just a ton of crit on them, a ridiculous amount of crit on them. So they're just the best for everybody across the board. But Shattrath leggings will be really close if you're A, a blood elf, or B, don't have one of the expertise items as a human that would make it put you over cap. Now, if you do have all the other expertise items as a human, Greaves of the Blood Warder are really good as well. They're a little bit behind the leggings of murderous intent, and if you're a blood elf, the Greaves of the Blood Warder are also going to be worse than Shattrath leggings, but they're pretty solid legs overall. The difference going from Greaves of the Blood Warder to Shattrath to leggings of murderous intent overall is about a 6 or 7 DPS increase, so it's not a huge deal. The leg item is probably not one that you need to prio so much. And then you also have your tier 5 legs, which if you need hit from your legs, which you really shouldn't if you have a balanced druid in the raid, but if you do need hit from your legs, the tier 5 legs are probably one of the first items you want to use as a hit alternative, essentially. So, if you're human, I would recommend Shattrath leggings until you get expertise items, and then switching to either Blood Warder or Murderous Intent. And if you're a Blood Elf, I would recommend keeping Shattrath leggings on until you can get Murderous Intent, or even just keeping Shattrath leggings because they are pretty close. So, and if you need hit, maybe check out the tier 5 legs. Now for your boots, there's 3 different boots here. As you can see, the 2 on the right are pretty much the same, like almost identical. Star Strider are probably a little bit better because the MP5 is really good to have. Now you're not going to get the suck up bonus on these anyway, you're just going to put red gems in there, so that doesn't really matter a whole lot. And then a good second BIS option is the War Boots of Obliteration from Tidewalker. And of course the BIS boots are from Vash and Solarian. So now they're hunter boots, they're going to be a little hard to get. Just like the leggings of Murderous Intent, like a lot of other melee want them as well, so they might be a little harder to get. So war boots are a good option if it's just hard for you to compete with your hunters for a boot token. So as for rings, Shapeshifter's ring is really good. You're going to use it probably into Sunwell, but at least into tier 6. And then you have Ancestral Ring of Conquest. Comes from the Lurker Below and Serpent Shrine Cavern. And then you have Band of the Rager General, which is like a hit alternative. It comes from Kael'thas. So now the Band of the Rager General I wouldn't really recommend using if you have a balanced druid. You're just not going to need the hit at all. And with a lot of these items, as with those other items, pretty much all your melee want this item, the Band of the Ranger General, so it's going to be hard to get. And it's one of those niche, if you don't have a balanced druid in the raid, then you could use this item, but it's going to be hard to get kind of things. But your BIS rings are going to be Shapeshifters and Ancestral Ring from Lurker Below. There's 4 trinkets that you might use in tier 5, Bloodlust Brooch and Dragonspine Trophy being the best of those. Now I know a lot of people talk about Tsunami Talisman being good, but it's really not that great. It's only got as you can see, it's a 10% proc chance and 45-second cooldown, which makes it about on par with Hourglass in terms of its proc rate, which is pretty bad. I mean, the uptime on that is going to be really low, and the hit is kind of wasted because we don't really need the hit unless you don't have a balanced druid. So I'm going to recommend against Tsunami Talisman unless you don't have a balanced druid and don't have DST or can't afford to get Darkmoon Crusade, which are going to be better options. Obviously DST is BIS, but if you can't get DST or you don't have it yet, you might just want to pick up a Blessings deck, all the Blessings cards, and then turn them into Darkmoon Fair, and you can get this really cool trinket, Darkmoon Card Crusade, which gives us a bunch of attack power and spell power that stacks up. And on a fight where you have a lot of uptime and not a lot of downtime, this trinket's really, really good, because not only do we gain damage from the attack power, but we also gain a little bit of damage from the spell power as well on Seal of Command and exorcism and consecrate and things like that. So it's definitely a great trinket for Ret Paladin. Other classes that are going to want Darkmoon Card Crusade are going to be like Shadow Priest and Prop Paladin probably. So the price might be a little high. But if you can talk to your guild members and ask them, you know, hey, if you get a blessings card, send it my way, kind of thing, you might be able to get it for kind of cheap. So, but that's going to be what I'm going to recommend for you is going to be Bloodlust Brooch and DST, or if you don't have DST, I'm going to recommend you get Darkmoon Card Crusade. As for weapons, you know, this is pretty straightforward. Twin Blade or Lionheart. And Twin Blade does drop off Kael'thas. It's got a pretty low drop rate, so it might be a while before you see one. But if you do get lucky and you do get one soon, you won't have to craft your Lionheart Executioner. It will save your guild, you know, 5 nether vortexes or whatever. And you might even be able to go armorsmithing if that's your thing. Make the Bulwark of Ancient Kings, and which only costs 2 nether vortexes as opposed to the 5 that you would need to make the Lionheart Executioner. Now, how do these items compare in terms of like damage? Well, they're about the same. If you get lucky with Lionheart Executioner, you could do more damage because of the strength proc. However, on a more consistent basis, you're going to do more damage with the Twin Blade. As you can see, it's just got a higher damage per second, higher damage range, and it's got some pretty good stats. So overall, I would recommend Twin Blade, but it may be a while before you see one, so don't be afraid to craft your Lionheart Executioner if you guys have the vortexes available and your guild is cool with it. You know, I wouldn't wait around for a Twin Blade, is basically what I'm saying, because it's a very low drop rate and you just might not get one. So I wouldn't rely on getting that. I would definitely go for the Lionheart Executioner, but if a Twin Blade drops in the meantime, well, then we can, you know, change our mind on things. And for your Libram, you're going to want the Libram of Avengement, which is obviously BIS the entire game. Doesn't ever change. This slot will always stay the same. It's from Heroic Blood Furnace, so yeah, pretty basic. As for your like 6% hit set, now there's a little bit of nuance to this discussion because first of all, the 2 on the left are really, really good because the Bracers of Eradication give you hit without sacrificing a lot of stats, like hardly any at all, right? And the Band of the Ranger General is like another one of the best hit options. Now the Krakenheart Breastplate does give you like 7 hit, which over the tier 5 option, which isn't to be understated, of course, but you're going to lose some strength, you know, as a result of that. So if you need a 6% hit set because you don't have a balanced druid, I would highly recommend going with the 2 items on the left before going with any of the items on the right, just because the items on the left are going to be better to sub in first. Now that being said, if you're a human, the tier 5 legs are a pretty great option to get your hit from, because if you have Vash Belt and if you have Shoulder Pads of the Stranger, you don't really, you know, you can't use the expertise from Shatrith leggings anymore. So that could be a really good option for humans that have pretty good gear and have the other expertise items. But that, you know, it's pretty straightforward. These are the 4 items that you can really pick from that are good for a hit set. And you know, if you just take what you can take until you can get to 6% hit, and you know, take what you can get. So now there's not going to be a whole lot of meaningful difference between like which items that you use out of these 4 to get your hit, but I would say the Bracers of Eradication are like, that's the #1 like biggest hit item that you can get if you need the hit, because you sacrifice like no stats to get the hit. So I would say if you need this much hit, Bracers of Eradication first, and then you can decide on which of the other 3 items that you want to fill in the rest of the hit for you. So pretty straightforward. And now I'm just going to end my video here. Talked about all the different slots and everything. In the description, once again, you can find all the different sets, the 3 and 6% hit sets, the armorsmithing set, which are pretty similar. All three are pretty similar. And thanks for watching, by the way. If you want to see more videos like this, go ahead and subscribe. And if you want to watch me play live, you can follow me on twitch.tv/KeithTV. So thanks guys, appreciate it.